Hello, my beautiful candidates. I want us today, as you prepare for your examination, let us look at the tips and the tricks. And I'm hoping that the teachers are also watching so that they assist you to close the gaps with this remaining time. Let us look at my presentation for you today would be, as you prepare for the final examination, what must you do now before the final day? And we'll look at the examination guideline. How do you prepare yourselves for the essays? And how do you do focused revision? How can we get those marks that are so easy to collect? And then the weighting of all sections and the importance of timed activities. After that, we'll then look at as you write the examination. This is now when you are actually in the examination room and busy writing, looking at the selection of the questions that you may start with, and then how do you answer the different types of questions that we have in our paper. When you look at the examination guideline, I cannot really overemphasize the importance of the examination guideline. At this point in time, you must actually use your examination guideline as your checklist. What do I mean by examination guideline as a checklist? Let me just go to the examination guideline itself and say this is the content that we have in economics that you must cover. Right, I won't spend time on the structure of the paper. You wrote the paper in September. So by now, more or less, you know what it's expected in terms of the structure of the paper. I want to focus more on how must you actually answer the questions. Now, if we look at our examination guideline, here we have our topic, the circular flow. You need to sit down and say, right, in the circular flow, I must do the open economy circular flow model. And then you look at all the content that you are supposed to cover. Briefly describe the concepts related to the circular flow. In other words, anything that have to do with the circular flow, all the participants, the real flow, the injections, any other concept that is related to this topic, you must be able to explain those. And I said explain and not necessarily give a definition, because a definition would be sometimes from the book, a word-to-word kind of explanation. But the way it is structured here, you answer in the manner in which you understand the concept without leaving out the important elements. Right? If you can tick that and say, I'm okay with the concepts, you get to the next one. Say, draw and interpret an open four-sector circular flow diagram. What do you mean by a four-sector model? It means you must have all your three participants, your household, your business, your government. Because it's a four-sector model, you must also now include your foreign sector. So if you can tick that, you go to your participants, discuss the four participants and their relationship. You go to justifying the equality, equality that is the leakages equals to air injections. So you go on ticking. I'm not going to spend time on this, but I want to actually make you understand what do I mean when I say your examination guideline should be, at this point in time, your checklist. You must be able to check everything that has been done there. And for example, you have here, discuss in detail the markets within the four-sector model. And as soon as you see discussion in detail, by now you should be knowing, then you are faced with your essay. So when that happens, you must know what we mean by factor market, product market, durable, factor market, financial market, as well as foreign exchange market. And so you go on. For example, you have been using the papers, you come here, you see your national aggregates. But some of the papers you used have only handled the GDP. Then you can't tick off the GDP approach from the income approach and from the expenditure, because you have only done one part. Maybe you have only done value added. That is why I say you must check. Until you have checked everything, then it means there's content that you have not actually covered in terms of preparing yourself for the examination. Right? That was just by way of showing you what I mean when I say you must actually use your examination guideline as your checklist at this time as you prepare yourself for the examination. We can then go back to our presentation and look at other aspects that you need to prepare yourself as you use your examination guideline. And let us look at the next one, which is the essays. As you prepare your essays, remember you have your essays for macroeconomics and you have your essays for pursuit. And you'll be asked only one essay in the macro, one in the pursuit. I would suggest that as you prepare yourself, do a mind map. I don't know the kind of mind map you are used to. You must not necessarily use the one that I know or the one that your teacher knows, but the one that will enhance your understanding of what it is that you are doing. Now, as you do your mind map, at the center, you have the main topic that you are about to discuss. Let's take the very one that we have just seen on the examination guideline. We have just seen the markets. Now you know that you are supposed to discuss the markets. Now you start writing out the subtopics. Now you are going to write, now what market is this? We have a factor market, we have the goods market, we have the foreign exchange market, and then you also write there, okay, we also have our other market, and then after you have done that, what must you do then? You must be able to say, right, under, say, goods market, you do the brief explanation of what is happening in the goods market. You go to the next market, you do the same. You go to the financial market, you do the same, separate it into your different kind of markets, and then you go on and on and on like that. But when you go back, you realize, no, but I have forgotten what it means when they talk about the capital market. Then you say, okay, the capital as part of that. You say, okay, let me open my book again, read again the information pertaining to the markets. And then after you have read, close it again, start again with your mind map until such that at least you can mention all your markets. At least you can have 2 to 3 explanation of factors that you can write under each subheading. And then you must also have your examples. Remember, when we mark, before we even mark your essay, you have 8 marks of the 26 marks of the main part of the essay. And those are just easy marks because that is just for you naming the subheadings and the examples that you would have given under each subheading. And then thereafter, the explanations would be allocated 2 marks. So this, according to me, these are your easy marks. Because the way the question is structured or the guidance given in your examination guideline is the same way that the question will appear most of the time in your question paper. And this kind of content, you actually just are relating the information as you have read it without necessarily interpreting it. So these are your collectible marks, my beautiful candidates. Beautiful and handsome. Right. As you prepare your examination, for your examination, let us look at the focused revision. Focused revision, here I mean, if you take the whole paper and start revising by answering all the questions, then it means you are subjecting yourself to two main topics at the same time, and you may not necessarily be focused. And that ticking off on your examination guideline becomes a bit challenging. Then you don't know by the time you are supposed to write the examination how much of each of the main topics you have actually covered. So I would advise that as we have the previous question papers, do your multiple choice. If you have decided you are starting with macroeconomics, then just start doing the question 2s and the question 5s of the different question papers. Now, as you do that, you need to tick off from your examination guideline. Why are you ticking off? You tick off because some of the papers, you may have done 5 papers, and in those 5 papers, like I said, maybe you only did one method of calculating the GDP, and you have not done others. Maybe in that paper, the 5 very papers that you have practiced with, you have only done the current account and not other sections of the balance of payment, and so on and so on. And therefore, ticking off as you use your papers will actually make you measure how much of the content you have already covered. Very important. Right, as you prepare for your final, another thing is the collectible marks. I have already alluded to the collectible marks. The essay questions, the 28 marks part, is actually your collectible marks in economics. Another part where you can get your collectible marks or easy marks is when you do the description of concepts, because there you are not analyzing anything, you explain the concepts as you have actually studied them. Also, on the first questions of your section B, you have named this list that are very easy marks to get, my candidates, and therefore you must be very ready for those marks that are easy to get. Remember also, as you prepare for your examination, don't lose sight of the different sections that your paper has. If you only do the essays, maybe you might not be able to respond well in other questions in section B that may need you to be able to understand the data response questions, for an example. You may not be able to, although you have the information in section C, but you may not have practiced enough to understand the level of difficulty of some of the questions that are in section B, like the how questions and so on. Or you may not be ready enough to do section A. We'll now, in a short while, also talk about different sections, how do you approach the different questions. But what is important, as we discuss this for now, make sure that you practice your essays because they contribute 20% of the paper. Section B, that 80 marks of the 2 questions that you would have chosen actually make up 53% of the paper, and section C, 27% of the paper. Another very important thing that I feel that you need to do as you practice for your examination, you must do timed activities. It will not help that you know the content, but you are not able to complete the paper or you can't finish. And all the content that you knew that you were supposed to have responded and left it for us to go and mark, it's not with us. You have left with it now because you could not attempt all the questions that we are supposed to attempt. So it is important, therefore, to do timed activities. Let me give guidance in terms of how are you going to do this. Because if you are writing the whole paper, obviously it's 150, it's 2 hours. But now you are not doing the whole paper at a go, and you are doing certain sections of the paper. The formula that you use, you take the marks of the content that you want to attempt. Let's say you are just dealing with one of the data response questions. Then you need to take how much is the data response question? It's 10 marks. Ne? You take the 10 marks. I'm going slowly on this one. You take the 10 marks, you divide the 10 marks with the 150. Why 150? That is the total of the paper. Then you multiply that with 120. Where does this 120 comes from? Is the minutes or the time that you are supposed to spend if you were to write the full paper. And I've worked with this so many times that I think the right answer would be about 8 minutes. So when you attempt the question, then you spend not more than 8 minutes trying to answer that question. You are actually helping yourself to be ready to write within the given time that you will be writing using in the examination room. You do the same with any other question that you do. You do the whole question maybe of section B of 40 marks, then you must do 40 divided by 150, multiply by your 120, you get the minutes that you must spend responding to that question. Then you will also not only be content ready for the examination, but you'll also be time ready for the examination. It is therefore important at this time, as you practice, you must check how long you spend on each of the questions. Right, I think more or less I've given you a picture of how do you prepare yourself for the examination. Looking at the different papers, ticking off what you have covered, checking what you have not covered, focusing as you do your revision. If you are focused on macro, do macro, tick off, be sure that you are happy, you have done everything, then go to pursuits. And if you feel you want to start with pursuit, focus on pursuit, tick off all the content as prescribed, as it is shown in the examination guideline, then go to the next one. That will actually will help you to store the information in your long-term memory. Otherwise, you will have a little of this, a little of that, and not much that you have actually stored in your long-term memory if you are all over the place without focusing on your revision. Right, with that out of the way, let us look at what is it that you do as you write the examination. Now you are in the examination room. As you look at your paper, you are now in the examination room, you are on your own, we can't assist you there, and we only sitting outside somewhere very far from the center and hoping that you do your best. Select the questions that will give you more marks. Don't look at the first question and you see 5 marks that you think you can answer. Then you start answering. You realize you don't know much about the question. Then you hop from one question to another. You waste a lot of time because now you must cancel that one, go to another one, and so on. Before you even write, look at the questions. Look at how much of the content in the different questions you actually have responses to. Then you select your questions. Remember, in any case, section 1 is compulsory. Section A is compulsory. You are going to answer all the questions. And then section B, you are going to answer 2 of the 3 questions. And then in section C, you are going to answer 1 essay of the 2 essays. And therefore, before you even write, you already have mapped what is it or which questions you are actually going to respond to based on how much information you have that will give you as many marks as it is possible depending on your knowledge of the questions. Right, now you are set for starting to respond. You must answer the questions now. You don't have to start with question 1 per se. If you realize, but essay, I still can remember my mind map, I can still remember my content, so I want to start with the essay. You are allowed to do so. You can have your question 6 as your first question, or your question 5 as your first question, or whichever you prefer to start with. But remember, don't renumber the questions. Now that you have started with question 5, it must still remain question 5, but it is the first question you attempted. That is very important. Let us look at how do you now respond to the questions now that you have decided on the questions, you have decided on the order in which you are going to respond to the questions. The first section, section A, which would be your question 1, would be, your 1.1 would be your multiple choice. How do you answer your multiple choice? Remember, they say you must you write the numbering 1.1.1 and then you give the symbol. You go to 1.1.2, you give the symbol that is correct. But now let's say you have the multiple choice and you are not sure of the answer. There are only 2 possible ways that I think are easy to actually ensure that more or less you get the marks. The first one is you know the answer definitely. So you go straight to the answer and say, savings flow back into the circular flow as investment. But if you don't know the answer, then you must do your elimination. The elimination process actually helps you to narrow down the responses that you must choose from. So how do you narrow down the responses? You look at what is it that you must complete, and then you go to your distractors. There are certain distractors that are way out in terms of what the question wants you to respond to. So you start eliminating those. You scratch them out. For an example, you say, savings flow back into the circular flow as exports. Maybe it is not right. You stretch it out. Imports, maybe it is not right. You stretch it out. But we are not so sure between these other 2. Then you try to reason out and choose what you think is the best possible answer. It may not be right sometimes, but most of the time you have increased your chances of getting the correct response by eliminating those are completely don't make sense according to you. So that is how you respond to your multiple choice as you have your different questions. Right, that was just an example of how you approach your multiple choice. Then you go to your second question in your compulsory, question 1, which is your match type of questions. Right, when you look at the way our match is constructed, is such that your concepts are in column A, and your explanation or your phrases that explains the concepts are in section B. This you must try. If it's not working, don't try any new things that are not working for you. If it is not working for you, do what you have always been doing. But for me, what works better is starting numbering, having 1.2.1, 1.2.2, 1.2.3, 1.2.4, 1.2, like that. And then as you go to your explanation of concepts, then you read the concept. It's easier if you read here, compares export prices with import prices by means of indexes. Then when you come this side, it is easier to go through the concepts quickly. Is it monetary policy? It is marginal propensity, and so on and so on. Then you are able to find your answer quicker than when you are supposed to read a concept. Say you read monetary policy. I'm just making an example in terms of the columns that I have now. So it could be any other content. So if you start with the column A, you must go monetary policy, for example, if it's a concept. Then you go to section B. Then you must go read all those phrases, and they are long. and sometimes you don't get to the answer immediately. So you may have read about 5 to 6 before you come to the right answer. Right, that is just a strategy that I can give you that you may use, and if it is not working, like I said, do not do that. But if you find it easy to use, that is better. Because if you look at, for example, I'm speaking under correction now, papers like business studies, they have these longer phrases on the first column and then the concepts on the other column, which makes it a lot easier, and such advice will therefore not be necessary. For us, it is a necessary advice. Right. The other part, that is the last part, your 1.3, that is where you are answering concepts. Don't be in a hurry to just give a response to any. Remember here, you are given an explanation, then you must actually say which concept is being described there. Now, as you do that, one, obviously by now you know you are not supposed to use abbreviations because you are testing your ability of economics in terms of knowing your concepts. You write every concept as it's supposed to be. No GDP, but gross domestic product, for an example. Now, as you do your concepts, another thing that I have seen makes it easy for learners to actually check themselves before they even submit the scripts. After you have responded and given the concept that you think it's actually describing what has been described on the paper, in order for you to just check yourself, try to explain the very concept that you gave as your response. And if you explain the concept, you'll realize that, but I said this is maybe subsidies. But when I explain subsidies, they are not explaining the concept that is written on the question paper. So you are able to say, maybe I must revisit my response and try to think what other concept could possibly be described by what is being in the question paper. Right, that's one advice I would give you then when it comes to concepts. That is what you do then when you attempt all your section A, 1.1, 1.2, and your 1.3. Right, let's go to section B. Remember, I said your section B also has a lot of marks. So you need to know your content in section B. If you answer question 2, it will be your macroeconomics. And if you answer question 3, it will be your pursuit. And when you answer question 4, it will be a combination of pursuit as well as macroeconomics. Right. I will just use, sorry, pardon me for that. I'll just use question 2. But what I will say in question 2 will definitely be applicable also in question 3. It will also be applicable in question 4. Now, when you look at your questions, the 2.1.1 or the 3.1.1 or 4.1.1, depending on the one that you are responding to, you will realize that these are lower order type of questions, which are easy to respond to because you are only naming. I normally say, if you have covered all your content, this would be very easy because then you will just, say for an example, we have already studied markets as your essay. If we can say here, name the 2 markets that are there in the circular flow, you'll be able to name them. So it is just a recall kind of question that you must also collect marks on. And then you have the second question, which is your middle order type of question. When you answer your middle type of order question, you can't give us a weight for that 2 marks. We expect you to actually give us information that is like a sentence or two or so. And a lot of candidates think this is the most difficult question. But actually this is one of the questions that you can attempt with ease. Just check what is it that the question wants you to do. And if you understand the concepts, you'll be able to answer the question. Let me just make an example and say, what effect will a weak currency have on exports? Now you need to understand, what do you mean by a weak currency? Do people buy more when our currency is weak, or do they buy less? And they say here, if the currency is weak, what does it mean for our exports? Now you need to be able to respond to say, okay, if the currency is weak, then it means more people will be buying from us because our money in terms of has actually become cheap, which is our currency. So you do the same with all other type of questions here. It's unfortunate that I can't use a lot of other examples just to show you how easy this question is when you know all your concepts and can actually relate them in terms of what is elicited as a response from you. Right. And then we have the 2.2s and your 2.3s, as well as in the other questions. In short, those are your data response questions. When you do your data response questions, you don't have to actually be focused on the fact that, oh my goodness, it's recent data, now they're talking about the oil, they're talking about Ukraine, and so on and so on. But when you look at 90% of the content that is being assessed in that data response question is the content that you know. Because if you have to briefly describe the concept, that does not have much to do with the data itself. If they ask you, why does the government provide, I'm making examples now, why does the government provide subsidies on products? You already know those because you have already done your national aggregates. So all you need to do is just respond to the questions, which would be very easy. For an example, I'm looking at the one that is before me here, where they say, give one example of taxes on products. Now you are thinking, remember you have taxes on products, taxes on production. Be sure what you are responding to, then you are giving the example. Therefore, if we talk about VAT, is that on products? Yes, and so on. Now we also have identify the method that was used to calculate. Now, in such questions where perhaps you can relate to your data, but we have already done that with most of you. You are able to check, the answer is not there, but you can see there's compensation of employees. So which approach is this one? Where the factors of production have earned some income, and therefore it's an income method. So more or less, now determine the value of A above. And if you look at that, what is the value of A? Then remember you have done your national aggregates. Recall from that, what did they mean? What do we mean by a gross value added at the basic price? And then remember, we are adding, we have taxes and we have subsidies. But those are on production. And on product is the final product. So more or less, you need to know how do you do your calculations, because those are middle difficult type of questions. And therefore, your middle difficult questions are easy when you have done your work, my candidates. They are not very difficult. I will not be able to do the calculation here with you because my focus mainly is for you to be able to approach the questions. If you have challenges with content, you have us to help you until the time when you go to examination. Right. Now, I want to look at 2.4 type of questions. Actually, when you look at 2.4 kind of questions, you'll realize that in the main is what you will you will be doing when you do your essays, because it's mainly of the recalling of the information. Sometimes they just say discuss, but you are not discussing everything that you have learned, but only a portion of what they want, the examiner wants you to respond to at that time. Another thing that they would ask you to do will be distinguish. But I want to bring your attention to the drawing of the graphs. Sometimes they ask you to draw the graph and explain the graph. Always, as you prepare now, take into account which graph are you actually busy with, which variables are being depicted in that graph, so that when you label your graph, you label your axis, and then you label accordingly. I normally say not all the graphs are about the price and quantity. It depends on what variables are being discussed in question. And therefore, it is very important that you must know your variables and where do you label your axis, your y-axis, as well as your x-axis. Now, the 2.5s, the 3.5s, and the 4.5s, they have the why and the evaluate type of questions. Remember, already when we were doing the second question in section B, that is let's go back a little, you are 2.1.2. You were already accustomed to the questions of how. I normally say the only difference here is with that other one, we need a short response. With this one, we need a longer response. Hence, it is an 8-mark question. But basically, you use the same approach. Let's make use of an example. If they say to you, how does the household contribute to the increase in the economy? Can you see the same rationale can be used here? You know the household. You know the explanations around the household. But you know also what is required in order to improve the economy. You know that there must be workers that are qualified in order to improve the economy. That relates to the household. And therefore, you can even just say the household will contribute to the increase in the economy by. That is enough, then you start writing. But you can't just explain the household without relating that to the question. That is very important. At times also, when you have to evaluate, you need to think of the good and the bad of whatever it is that you are actually looking at and scrutinizing in terms of its, depending on the question that you are being asked. Let's quickly go to the essays. The essays, I have already spent some time when we're explaining your preparation for the examination. You are 28 marks. The 28 marks is the one that I said, those are your collectible marks. Why are they collectible? Your introduction, you look at the question that you are supposed to discuss, and you can therefore define any of those concepts that are there. How easy is that? And remember also, as you do that, you are just explaining the concepts. Don't say, I'm going to discuss this, and so on and so on. In your paper, there's also a guidance. Before the essays that you are supposed to, the essays that you are supposed to respond to, they actually gave you a structure and say, this is how the essay is going to be marked. If you don't remember what is required in your introduction, check that. If you don't remember what is required in the main part, go back to that. That is there for you to actually use it. It is not just there for fun. It is a guidance to you. And that gives you a picture of what you must do. You go to your main part. We have discussed how you practiced your main part. You now apply what you did as you were preparing for the examination. Write the different subtopics. After writing the different subtopics, there you already have your 8 marks. After that, you then explain each subtopic. And then you go to your additional part. When you look at your additional part, it's just as easy. Now that you know how to approach the the how questions, they evaluate kind of the questions, the why kind of questions. In other words, the high order type of questions. Then it will be easy to actually answer the additional part. It is not acceptable that some of the candidates leave this blank because you are actually using your own reasoning and application. I've made an example of how do you look at the variables in question that are placed before you, and then you answer accordingly. For an example, if they say, how can the monetary policy improve the economy? That's another thing. Then you can't just, on the additional part, say interest rates. That is not enough. You are not even giving us the direction in which the interest rates are going. You need to show us, if we are trying to improve the economy, then the interest rates must go down so that people have money, people can buy more, which is not something we are thinking of presently and perhaps not in the near future. Because what is happening now, the interest rates are going up and up and up. And you need to know, if the interest rates are going up as they do now, what is the impact in terms of the economy? Then it means people don't have enough disposable income, then people are not buying enough, and therefore the attempt is to cap inflation. So you need to be able to look at, right, this is the concept, this is how it is related to the other one, and what is the cause and effect. That is very important. Now, as you come to your conclusion must be of high order nature. Like I said, you look at your question paper, get used to doing that now as you practice. You look at your question paper, it's giving you the guidance in terms of how you must draw the conclusion. Then you do that. Your conclusion is not necessarily an explanation of the concept, but your conclusion is a therefore kind of statement. And therefore, anything that you say in the conclusion must not be something that you have already discussed as you were discussing your essays. Now, if we have some time, let's quickly just look at the essays that you need to tick off on your examination guideline. They're already there in your examination guideline. One, you need to discuss the circular flow. Here you must discuss the markets. I will not go at each factor, but that is basically the markets that you must discuss. If you do your circular, your business cycle, you must be able to discuss the paradigm. As you do your business cycle, you must also be able to discuss the features underpinning forecasting. These normally are, as they are, my candidates, and therefore you just have to have studied in order to respond to this main part of your essay. Let's quickly go to the others. Public sector, there you must be able to do the public sector. Sometimes it becomes challenge for other teachers to say, but they talk public sector, they are also talking public sector provisioning. But it is also stated in your examination guideline that you can actually link the public sector and the public sector failure and provisioning, as these are related. If the government is not able to provide certain services, it is leading to public sector failure. Public sector failure reasons are also related to the provisioning. Right, and then the foreign markets, you must be able to discuss in detail the reasons for international trade. You must be able to do the demand reason as well as the supply reasons. Very important, don't forget to remember your subheadings, because with your subheadings and your examples, already you have your 8 marks in your pocket before you even go further with your discussions. Now, when we look at protectionism, then you economic growth. And then you must also be able to discuss in detail the following South African growth and development policies. Right, I'm not going to outline the policies one by one, but that is one of the essays, and then you must be able to do your indicators. And you must also remember you have economic as well as social indicators. I can't emphasize more that first do one main topic, then do the next main topic. But now there's this tendency that I see with some of the learners. They say, but say this topic looks this topic looks easier than this one. Then you are saying, actually, of the 6 that you were supposed to study, let's say for macroeconomics, you are only prepared for 4 because you thought, no, this one is difficult, let me go do the other one. Now, if none of the 4 that you studied for are asked, that's where you end up writing any of the 4 that you studied and get a 0 mark. Unlike when you studied all of them, and then the chances have increased for you to be able to respond. Then you go to the other main topic. Now, if, say, in the other main topic, then we are not able to do the 6 of that other main topic, at least we have done, say, 5 or we have done 4. So we have also increased your chances of either answering this topic or the other topic. But if you keep looking at this one is easy, you hop, you go to that one looks easier than that other one, then you hop around studying, then when you are in examination room, it is just problems. It's chaotic and you can't get marks and you are disappointed because the essays that we have prepared have not been asked because you were not focused as you were doing your study. That is the importance of focusing as you study. Start with one topic, go to the next topic, and then after you are comfortable, then you can answer all the questions. But every time, sit down, do your section A as part of your warm-up, and then you do the questions that you are busy with. Do again a section A, and then your warm-up. Like that. And I would advise you that as you use the papers, another thing besides looking at the examination guideline, just check how the responses were expected in that particular question so that you are able to respond accordingly. Because this is one thing that is actually costing us 11 sevens. It is also costing us even a simple pass because some of our candidates are not responding to the question or they are just partially responding to the question, which makes them not to get all the marks that they were supposed to get. And in conclusion, I would like to say the road to success is always under construction, and therefore keep improving yourself until such time you come to the examination room. And when you write, you must do it right the first time so that when you are done with matric, you are done. It is about going to higher education. I wish you well in your preparations, but most importantly, I say congratulations with the results. I'm already congratulating you now because I know you are going to pass. Thank you very much. Keep on keeping on. Thank you.